Welcome back. It's not focused. What the heck, man? Why isn't the camera focusing? There we go. Welcome back to the first Mr. H-Math videos in months. Today we're going to be adding negative numbers. And you're probably like, how do you add a negative number? It's a really difficult concept. Right, Ben? But I promise it's not as bad as you think. So let's say we have something like 3 plus negative 5. Right now, we have two numbers with different signs. We have a positive number in 3 and a negative number in negative 5. What I like to do is look at the absolute value between these two numbers. I see that the absolute value of 3 is 3, and the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. What I want to do is take the sign of the absolute value that is greater. Which absolute value is greater? The absolute value of 3 or the absolute value of negative 5? It's going to be the absolute value of negative 5 because 5 is greater than 3. So whichever absolute value is greater, we take the sign of that number. So here it's going to be a negative number. And since we are adding a positive and a negative together, we are actually going to subtract the absolute values from each other. So we have 5 minus 3 equals 2. So the answer is going to be negative 2. Now, let's say if I had negative 2 plus 6. They have different signs. So because one is negative, one is positive. So I'm going to take the absolute value of them and the absolute value of negative 2 and the absolute value of 6. This equals 2. This equals 6. Since the absolute value of 6 is greater than the absolute value of negative 2, my answer is going to be positive. And since they have different signs, I am going to subtract the absolute values. 6 minus 2 equals 4. That's going to be positive. So what we can gather is if we are adding two values with different signs, one's positive, one's negative, we are going to take the sign of the greater absolute value between the two numbers, and then we are going to subtract their absolute values. But what if I have two negatives? Negative 3 plus negative 4. What's nice about them, both having the same sign, they are both negative, is that you can just keep the sign because they are the same. And since that they're both negative, I can just take the absolute value of both numbers and actually just add them together. So that will equal 7. And since we have our negative sign because they are both negative already, we are going to get negative 7 for our answer. So just to recap what we've done, if you're adding two values with different signs, you are going to keep the sign of the greater absolute value. So we take the absolute value of both numbers here, and we keep the sign of a number that is greater. So since negative 5 has a greater absolute value than 3, then it's going to be negative. For these, since the absolute value of 6, a positive number, is greater than the absolute value of negative 2, the answer is going to be positive. If they have different signs when we're adding, we are going to subtract the absolute values. If they have the same sign, we are going to add the absolute values and keep the sign because they have the same sign.